a big setback for the CRISPR space today, in particular because a company that is in the allogenic Car-T space, Allogene Therapeutics, had a clinical withdrawal from the FDA, which means the FDA basically said that one of their phase trials has to be reviewed, and until that review happens, all their trials have to be on hold. It's a temporary hold, and it hit all the gene editing stocks, including ours, and that's why we had a drawdown. We are seeing something that has started, I think, probably months ago, which is an underperformance of biotech, and in particular CRISPR and gene editing. And I think today we got some news of why that is actually happening. Safety concerns are real. We have to be careful about that. It's part of the biotech investing. I want to discuss this in more depth today. This is another Wrong podcast. It's October 8th, 2021. This is Krim Delco. For the day, the fund is down 3.5%. The market's down 20 basis points. For the year, we are up 7.7%. The market is up 16.3%. We are underperforming by 8.6%. So we had news yesterday evening, so on Thursday, that Allogenic Therapeutics had a clinical halt on one of their trials. And it basically means the following, that you have certain results that patients in the trials have. I don't want to go into details here, but just to mention that according to the conference call of the company, it is one patient out of about 100 patients who had a slight change in some of their cells that were injected, the CAR-T cells, and that was concerning, and the FDA basically said, okay, we need to study this further, we need to take a look at this, and please, in the meantime, halt all the other trials. So this is kind of what's going on. I want to discuss a little bit what allogenic CAR-T cell therapy is, how it relates to CRISPR, and then how we think about this going forward. So allogenic CAR-T therapy is the following. So we have cancer, and one of the big breakthroughs in cancer has been what's called immunotherapy. Immunotherapy is when your own immune system is able to attack the cancer and go after the cancer. About 100 years ago, this started, and there's a book that I read. The name eludes me now. I'm going to put it in the show notes. A book that has really nicely summarized this whole space. So it gives you a history, and then it gives you the most recent developments. Before I go into the details of what immunotherapy is, I just want to mention the big picture is that about 100 years ago, the first signs were observed that probably the immune system is able to fight cancer. Then we had a long period of skepticism. And then we had, maybe 20 years ago, the start of a sort of a renaissance of immunotherapy. It culminated in what the autologous immunotherapy space consisted of. Autologous immunotherapy is when you take a person's own T cells and then you reprogram them into cancer-fighting cells. This is a great way to do it, but it's expensive, it takes time, and it's often difficult to do because a person that is sick usually doesn't have good T cells. So to use those cells and reprogram them is often can turn to be futile. So what the next generation of CAR-T therapies is this allogenic, which is you take healthy donors from third party, you reprogram them, you put them in the person. What that means is you need to do two things. You need to program the cell so it becomes an attacking cancer cell, meaning it attacks cancer cells. And the cell also has to be tolerated by the immune system of the patient. So you have to do two types of programmings here. So this is where gene editing comes into place, because the way you reprogram these cells is you alter the DNA of those cells by expressing certain proteins that help you either attack cancer cells or, in other words, help you be tolerated by the immune system. So this is where gene editing comes in, and this is the connection between CAR-T cell therapy and our CRISPR stocks. Now, Allogene Therapeutics is using actually an older technology called Talens, which is developed by a company called Cellectis. So this company is kind of, think of it like the equivalent of CRISPR Therapeutics or a Caribou or a Beam, but it's using Talens and not CRISPR. So this is sort of a pre-CRISPR technology. And this is already the first point that I want to make here, that we're talking here about a technology which is not CRISPR, so which doesn't allow for the fast iteration, for the low-cost fast iteration that CRISPR allows. This is one of the first things. Now, going through the S1s and 10Ks of Caribou and Intellia and Allogene Therapeutics, I can already see one big theme going through, which is in particular Caribou saying that their CRISPR technology, the chRDNA technology, which they think will revolutionize CAR-T allogenic cell therapy, is insofar better because it's faster, more efficient, and has less side effects. Now, I can't quantify this, I can't prove this, I think nobody can. The only proof is the proverbial proof in the pudding, which means we will see what they deliver on the therapeutic and clinic side, but that's what they claim. So I think as investors, we have to be confident in their claims. We have to understand that it is biology, so no matter how much they claim that they're better and they're this and they're that, we can have adverse results. Like this is a good example. It's 1 out of 100 patients, and by the way, this particular patient has had some accumulative effects. They got sick for other reasons. They had to do certain therapies that others didn't do. So there was a lot of culminating effects which ended up becoming a problematic situation. And then they found this particular result, what they call sort of an atypical chromosomal situation within the CAR-T cells that were injected. And that gave the FDA okay, now we have to stop this and see what's going on. Because here's what you don't want to happen when you do any kind of CAR-T cell therapy. You don't want the T cells to start attacking the body and kill the patient. This is the big, big fear. This is what, in general, immunotherapy has always been scared of, which is that your own immune system turns against you. This is what you don't want. So this is kind of like having a secret police or a Navy SEALs unit within your own organization that turns against you. You don't want that. So you have highly trained, highly effective cells that for some reason could turn against you. This is what we want to avoid. And this is why the FDA is very careful. And this is why we have these setbacks within the immunotherapy space. We've always had them. It's not the first time. And this, unfortunately, is just another example of one of those setbacks. Now, as far as the CRISPR stocks are concerned, they have been underperforming. I believe it has to do with this particular case, in particular because no matter what, these things leak. And probably that's why we had this underperformance. And that's fine. I don't care about that because you have the same way on the other side. But, excuse me, I think for us, it is important to understand the following. What we're trying to do here as investors is we're investing in the digitization of life sciences. There is going to be massive, massive setbacks because we're just about learning how to write the code of life. So we have learned how to read it. We will now start writing more of the code of life. And by writing the code of life, we will also understand much better how to read it. So there is an iterative process, a flywheel effect, if you want, that will allow us to get better and better at digitizing biology. We will have setbacks, and we, as investors, we or even run the risk of being too early. But what we can say for sure is that this is the future of medicine and life sciences. This we can say for sure. We also know that the democratization and the lowering of the cost, and in particular the lowering of iteration costs, is going to allow for disruption, because as we said many times on this podcast before, disruption is basically directly inversely related to the cost of iteration. the lower the cost of iteration, the higher the rate of disruption. And this is really what we're after. So we have this incredible opportunity to see the change of a whole industry, which is a huge industry, which is healthcare, medicine, life science, agriculture, food, all these things together. We have an opportunity to rewrite the code of life to see how that affects the expression of proteins, which are the workhorses of biology. And then we hopefully can learn from there and go forward and create effective products and services which help us cure diseases, which help us make more efficient nutrition, use less water, maybe even produce energy, all these kinds of things. So to summarize, while this is a setback for the space, and we absolutely agree with the correction in the market, we also believe that there is still a lot of opportunity ahead of us, that this particular case might as well be resolved very quickly in favor of the company of Allogenic Therapeutics and all the other companies by saying, well, this was sort of a one-off and we will see, we can go through this and we don't have to change fundamentally what's going on. Or it could also be that maybe the product has to be withdrawn and that maybe other products have to be developed. But the point here is that this is an older technology that hopefully with the Crispr technology and the further advancements of Crispr with base editing and prime editing, we have the ability to iterate much faster, to learn from mistakes, and come up with better products and services much faster. And this is the pillar of our investment in the Crispr index. Thank you.